systematically destroyed by an enemy that turned their greatest strengths against them. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos on the communication channel, calm and professional. "UEF destroyers, Lexington, Gettysburg, and Midway, you are authorized to engage. Target acquisition, lead swarm vessel." "Admiral," Commander Vexstar transmitted desperately, "your primitive weapons cannot succeed where our advanced technology has failed." "Understood, Commander." "Lexington, fire when ready." What happened next would be discussed in military academies for centuries. The lead UEF destroyer's railgun fired with a sound that was felt rather than heard, a deep subsonic pulse that resonated through space itself. The tungsten osmium penetrator, accelerated to 12% of light speed, struck the lead void swarm vessel before its adaptive systems could even register the attack. The kinetic energy transfer was instantaneous and catastrophic. The 2.3-kilogram projectile, carrying the kinetic energy equivalent of a small nuclear weapon, punched completely through the organic ship from bow to stern. The swarm vessel, which had been absorbing and adapting to energy weapons for the past 20 minutes, had no defense against simple, overwhelming kinetic force. The ship didn't explode, it simply ceased to exist as a coherent structure, torn apart at the molecular level by the passage of the hypervelocity projectile. The Alliance fleet watched in stunned silence as the 3 human destroyers methodically engaged the remaining swarm vessels. Each railgun shot was a precisely calculated application of kinetic energy, delivered too quickly for the organic ships to adapt or defend against. Within 15 minutes, the entire Void Swarm Scout fleet had been reduced to drifting debris. Commander Vexstar's voice, when it finally came over the communication channel, carried none of its earlier arrogance. "Admiral Chen, how is this possible? How did you know that kinetic weapons would be effective when our energy systems failed?" Admiral Chen's response was delivered with the same quiet professionalism she had shown throughout the crisis. "Sometimes, Commander, the oldest solutions are the best solutions. We've been throwing rocks at our enemies for 200,000 years. We've just gotten very, very good at it." The silence that followed was broken by General Thiss, his voice filled with new respect. "Admiral, I believe I speak for the entire Alliance when I say we have seriously underestimated human military doctrine. Perhaps you could share more details about your primitive weapons technology." In the days that followed, every major shipyard in the Alliance began retooling their production lines. Energy weapons remained important for many applications, but kinetic systems human railgun technology became the new standard for anti-swarm operations. The humans, who had been dismissed as backward primitives just weeks earlier, suddenly found themselves in the position of weapons consultants to the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Their crude kinetic weapons had accomplished what exotic energy systems could not, proving that sometimes the simplest solutions were also the most effective. Admiral Chen summed it up perfectly in her after-action report. "In warfare, there is no substitute for putting the right amount of force in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. Everything else is just engineering." 10-year-old Alex Harrison was used to being different. At the prestigious Nexus Academy on Centauri Prime, he was the only human student among 500 alien children from across the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. His small stature, pale skin, and lack of any obvious enhanced abilities made him an easy target for the Academy's more privileged students. The bullying had started on his first day, 3 months ago. Zixtar, a young draconian with metallic blue scales and natural bioelectric abilities, had taken one look at Alex and declared him just another primitive mammal from that backwater system. The other students quickly followed suit, treating the quiet human boy as beneath their notice, except when they wanted someone to pick on. "Look, the little ape is trying to solve quantum equations," sneered Vale Syra, a crystalline Altarian whose species could process mathematical concepts at superhuman speeds. She hovered above Alex's desk during advanced theoretical physics, her body generating a soft, mocking chime. Perhaps we should get him some simpler homework. Maybe basic addition? Alex kept his head down, focusing on his work despite the laughter that rippled through the classroom. He had learned early not to respond to the taunts. Fighting back only made things worse, and complaining to teachers was useless. Most of the faculty shared their students' assumption that humans were intellectually inferior to the advanced species that dominated galactic civilization. The worst part wasn't the academic mockery. Alex consistently scored in the top 10% of his class, despite his classmates' assumptions. The real pain came from the social isolation. Lunch periods spent alone, group projects where no one wanted to work with the primitive human, invitations to parties and social events that never came. Today's humiliation came during cultural heritage presentations, where each student was expected to share something meaningful about their species' history and achievements. Zixtar had presented on his people's mastery of bioengineering, complete with holographic displays of their living cities that grew like organisms. Velsira had demonstrated her species' quantum computing abilities, solving mathematical problems that made the classroom's AI systems seem sluggish. When Alex's turn came, he stood nervously at the front of the class, his presentation tablet trembling slightly in his hands. "Humans have always been explorers," he began quietly. "We've spread across the galaxy, not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we're curious. We want to understand other species, learn from them, and find ways to work together." The snickers started immediately. "Curious about what?" Zixtar called out. "How to better serve your betters. My research shows that humans excel at adaptation and cooperation," Alex continued, trying to ignore the growing laughter. "Throughout history, we've survived by building alliances and—" "Alliances?" Velsira's crystalline form pulsed with amusement. "What could primitives like humans possibly offer to advanced civilizations? You have no meaningful technology, no significant military power, no economic influence. You're barely a footnote in galactic politics." The teacher, Professor Kethmore, made no effort to intervene. Like most of the faculty, he viewed humans as a charity case, allowed into prestigious institutions like Nexus Academy, more out of political correctness than any real academic merit. Alex's face flushed red, but he pressed on. "Actually, humans have made significant contributions to—" "To what?" Zixtar stood up, his bioelectric abilities crackling around his claws for intimidation. "Manual labor? Basic resource extraction? Face it, ape boy, your species exists to serve. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be." The classroom erupted in laughter and agreement. Alex stood frozen at the front of the class, his presentation forgotten, fighting back tears of frustration and humiliation. This was exactly what happened every time he tried to defend his species or himself. No one would listen. No one cared. That's when the classroom door slid open with a soft hiss. Principal Korthvel, a distinguished Centaurian administrator, entered the room with an expression of barely controlled panic. Behind him walked a woman who made every student in the classroom suddenly forget how to breathe. She was human, clearly Alex's mother, based on their similar features, but she carried herself with an authority that seemed to bend reality around her. Tall and elegant, with premature silver in her dark hair, she wore a simple grey business suit that somehow commanded more respect than the most elaborate royal regalia. But it was her eyes calm, intelligent, and utterly unimpressed by the grandeur around her that made even the most arrogant students instinctively lower their gazes. "Your Majesty," Principal Korthvel stammered.